Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Robin Dwyer. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories. A time to set the agenda. China's big decision makers open their annual meetings in Beijing to chart the country's future. No excuses. The US Vice President demands Israel increase the flow of aid to Gaza, calling for an immediate ceasefire. This as truce negotiations in Cairo stall. Hamas says it can't provide a list of hostages, blaming the ongoing bombardment in Gaza. And in a world first, France is set to make abortion a constitutional right in a special joint session of Parliament. It's time for China's big decision makers to map out the country's future. The annual session of the country's top political advisory body is underway in Beijing. President Xi Jinping attended the opening along with other senior leaders, reviewing the agenda for the 6 days ahead. The event marks the start of China's annual political gatherings, known as the Two Sessions. Key political and economic plans will be discussed by lawmakers, with advice given by representatives from a range of sectors. Our correspondent Wu Bin is in Beijing. So you were at the opening session. Tell us more about it.
This afternoon, over 2,000 members of the 14th CPPCC were at the opening session, and many foreign ambassadors to China were also invited there. The main agenda of the members is to review a work report delivered by its chairman Wang Huning, reflecting all the detailed works of the members in the past year. And tomorrow morning, it will be the opening session of the 14th National People's Congress, and all the members of the 14th CPPCC will be invited there to listen to the government work report.
And the political advisors who represent these different sectors, tell us about their role in submitting proposals.
Right, so for all the CPPCC members, their major responsibility is to make proposals, make suggestions. So the opening session has reviewed the work of the last year according to the work report. Since the annual session last year, the members of the CPPCC have made more than 5,600 proposals, and 99.9% of them have been handled by relevant government departments. And I would like to take you to look at the topics of those proposals, because by taking a look at those proposals, we can really get a sense of what are the major concerns of the society. So among all the proposals, there are over 2,200 related to China's economic development. That's accounting for almost 40%. So you see, economy is really the concern of many. And detailed topics including building a socialist market system, promoting industrial development, rural revitalization, and also high-level opening up. And over 1,500 proposals are about what it calls social construction. That mainly means to improve people's livelihoods. That accounts for about 26%. And those topics, detailed topics, include improve employment, social security, healthcare, and education. And over 700 of the proposals are related to China's ecological construction. For example, topics like China's carbon peak and carbon neutrality mission. Those topics takes around 12% of the entire proposals. So you see, by taking a look at all the proposals, economy, people's livelihoods, and also environment are really the concern of the Chinese people. And I think what's more important is that not only are they making proposals, many of their proposals have become real policies or action plans that are being implemented nationwide. Back to you.
Wu Bin in Beijing, thank you very much. China's National People's Congress held a press conference in Beijing on Monday, a day before its opening session. Our correspondent Feng Yilei reports.
The bustling city of Beijing winds down for the day. We can see the entire country is just gearing up for a significant event in its calendar, the opening of the second session of the 14th National People's Congress, which is a key moment where China's legislative priorities and economic strategies for the year ahead will be laid out. Well, earlier today, the NPC spokesperson Lou Chunjian briefed the media on the agenda and arrangements for the upcoming event with 2,897 deputies out of some 2,900 in the 14th NPC have already registered. It means we are going to see a really high level of engagement tomorrow. And the agenda, as usual, of course, will include reviewing the government's work report, which China will set its target of economic growth and how it's going to achieve it. And also, for more about the country's economic focus, earlier, the NPC spokesperson also emphasized the role of the country's top legislature in providing a legal foundation for economic work and pushing for high-quality development. Well, the country's legislative agenda is closely aligned with the national priorities, according to what he said. And I should say the NPC's commitment to high-quality legislation is very evident with its focus on reform, opening up, and sustainable development. And this year, efforts will be intensified around key areas such as financial system reform, technological self-reliance, and environmental protection, aiming to underpin China's ambition for high-quality development. And also, amid global uncertainties and an era where technology shapes the future, the NPC has not shied away from tackling the legal challenges posed by new advancements, but show the commitment to fostering innovation while addressing ethical and safety concerns in emerging fields like artificial intelligence and biotechnology. And I should say, with a packed agenda and a focus on legal underpinnings for economic and social development, the outcome of this session will be really important. And as we await the commencement for the session tomorrow, starting tomorrow, the country's top legislature stands at a crucial conjuncture, ready to tackle the challenges of the day while also laying the groundwork for a sustainable and prosperous future for the country.
The US Vice President has called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, urging Israel to significantly increase the amount of humanitarian aid being sent to the enclave. Kamala Harris described conditions in Gaza as a catastrophe. She's due to hold talks with Israeli War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz in Washington. Israel failed to send a delegation to truce talks in Egypt over the weekend, demanding that Hamas release the names of the remaining hostages. But the Palestinian armed group says it can't provide a list because of Israel's ongoing attacks. Meanwhile, a teenage boy has reportedly been shot dead in Israeli raids on the West Bank. Witnesses say dozens of military vehicles drove into Ramallah, storming a refugee camp and opening fire. Palestinian officials say that more than 50 people have been detained. Well, let's go to Israel now and talk to our correspondent in Tel Aviv, Sarah Coates. So, Sarah, what are we expecting from these talks in Washington?
Robin, Benny Gantz will be holding very high-level talks with Kamala Harris, other senior officials, including Jake Sullivan, on a wide range of issues on things like limiting Palestinian casualties in Gaza and also getting more aid into the besieged enclave. And this really comes amid growing frustration between the Biden administration and also Benjamin Netanyahu and his hardline government on these policies inside Gaza, and also really their refusal to cooperate with the United States on things like what a post-war Gaza should look like. And what this trip also shows is divisions, cracks that are really forming from within the Israeli government. Reportedly, Benjamin Netanyahu did not okay this visit by Benny Gantz to Washington, saying to him that there is just one Israeli prime minister. And this is despite Benny Gantz coming out to say that he actually called Benjamin Netanyahu on Friday to inform him of this trip and to sort of coordinate messaging with him there. So this is really showing showing a lot of division, not just with Washington, but also, of course, here locally, and comes as Kamala Harris, as you mentioned, is really offering sharp condemnation of Israel for this limited aid getting into the Strip, saying it needs to get in urgently, also calling for these two warring parties to come to an agreement.
And there have been fresh raids on the West Bank, haven't there? What more do we know about those?
Certainly, we're hearing from people on the ground inside Ramallah that this was the largest raid that was seen in years. Pictures show dozens and dozens of Israeli vehicles rolling through Ramallah with many, many people arrested. We don't have a clear number on the actual number there, but we do understand that one teenager was shot in the neck and killed. Now, also, the Shin Bet Security Service has today just made an announcement saying that they recently foiled what they're calling an Islamic State-inspired attack, arresting 4 Palestinians from the West Bank city of Hebron, which the Shin Bet says had manufactured around 100 explosive devices to use against Israeli troops in the West Bank. And Robin, meanwhile, right now, Israeli forces are bombing parts of southern Lebanon after an anti-tank missile attack into northern Israel just a little earlier today, which killed 1 Thai worker and injured around 7 others. So this is, of course, very, very concerning, given that there is a lot of fear over this northern border really escalating.
Sarah Coates in Tel Aviv, thank you very much. Well, let's head straight to Gaza now and talk to our correspondent Akram Al-Sassari, who's in the southern city of Rafah. Akram, hopes rising for a ceasefire in time for Ramadan. What would that mean for Palestinians in Gaza?
Well, the ceasefire means for the Palestinians at least a temporary calm, a stop of the ongoing bombardment that has been taking place, a stop of the death resulting from the bombardment, a stop of the displacement, and also the entry of food, supplies, and non-food items as well through Rafah border. For the 2.37 million Palestinians, this is the case. For the 1.4 million Palestinians who are in Rafah area and southern Gaza Strip in general, it means coming back to their homes. It means also in the very extreme scenarios that they would be able to go attend to the wrecks of their homes and try to remove the debris and try to find their dears. It means that they would be able to access decent food. It means temporary stoppage of the ongoing misery that has been inflicted on the Palestinians for the last 5 months or so.
Akram, thank you very much. Our correspondent Akram Al-Sassari in Rafah in Gaza. You're watching CGTN, still ahead. Pushing for a ceasefire. The latest on negotiations to halt the fighting in Gaza and release hostages. We're in Cairo next.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
Well, China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us.
And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us, excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why, this is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
strengthening the foundation for a future powered by innovation, where high technology, high efficiency, and high quality converge. These three pillars are set to propel China's new productive forces and supercharge the Chinese economy into a new era of development, new industries, new models, and new growth momentum. Join CGTN as we guide you through the new productive forces poised to redefine the Chinese economy.
Welcome back. A reminder of our headlines. A time to set the agenda. China's big decision makers open their annual meetings in Beijing to chart the country's future. No excuses. The US Vice President demands Israel increase the flow of aid to Gaza, calling for an immediate ceasefire. This as truce negotiations in Cairo stall. Hamas says it can't provide a list of hostages, blaming the ongoing bombardment in Gaza. Well, with Israel yet to send its delegation to Cairo, the ceasefire talks haven't begun in earnest, although Egyptian state media says that progress has been made. Egypt, Qatar and the United States have been pushing for a truce. The latest proposal calls for a 6-week halt in the fighting with the release of hostages and Palestinian prisoners. Well, our correspondent Adel El-Marouki is in Cairo. So, Adel, what's been happening on day 2 of these talks?
Well, Egypt is quite strict about the information getting out of these meetings, and this has been the case by the Egyptian administration, whose intelligence officer are leading these negotiations with Qatar, the United States, and indirectly with a group of members of Hamas here in Cairo to try and broker what could be an acceptable deal by both sides. As you've mentioned, what Egyptians here have been saying is that progress has been made, but no specifics have been called on. And this is also the same that has been going on in the previous round of talks last week that were held in Qatar, through which they said some of the gaps have been filled, and technically there are some agreements, but nothing concrete has been announced yet. And it seems this will be the case until something evident and concrete as well comes out from these talks here in Cairo.
Has there been any official statement yet from Israel on what's been proposed so far?
Well, what we've learned, and this is just some leaked information and nothing confirmed from any side, is that there is and should be accompanied with the possible ceasefire an exchange of hostages agreement that should be taking place into several stages, through which women and children and seniors will be released first, and then the latest group of men and Israeli soldiers will later on be exchanged for a specific number to be agreed upon of Palestinian prisoners in Israel. This is basically the foundation to guarantee a lasting ceasefire. And also, as you've said, the mediating countries, the United States, Egypt and Qatar, have been aiming for having a 6-week-long ceasefire. That basically covers the current, this was the hope, of course, to cover this current week and the holy month of Ramadan, which will last for about 4 weeks, and then followed by the Eid, or the festive season after Ramadan. That covers the 6 weeks, through which the mediators want to maintain peace, because they know in Ramadan there will be a huge influx of worshippers, mainly from many Palestinians as well as Muslim visitors. These influx will be heading in huge numbers to Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, and this what threatens instability within the holy city itself, and therefore it is what everyone here from the mediators hope that reaching an agreement before Ramadan will help to diffuse the tension, and otherwise they fear that there will be escalated tension and waves of violence during the holy months within the occupied territories controlled by Palestine, controlled by Israel, and in Gaza as well, which could pour over into neighboring countries as well. This is the fear, and that's why we're seeing an incremented approach from neighboring countries and the people involved to have dropped by air aid into Gaza to maintain stability in the Strip, so as not to have any source of situation that could push Palestinians to breach the borders with Egypt specifically.
Adel, thank you very much. Our correspondent Adel El-Marouki in Cairo. In a global first, French lawmakers are holding a final vote on whether to make abortion a constitutional right. Let's talk to our correspondent, Tony Waterman, who's in Paris. So, Tony, President Macron has called this special session. Why is this issue in the spotlight now?
Well, you know that abortion has been legal here in France since 1975, up until 14 weeks of pregnancy, without question, even longer if there are complications. But there is new urgency behind getting abortion rights enshrined in the Constitution after the U.S. Supreme Court overturned that right back in 2022. Tens of millions of women are now without access to abortion care, even in extreme emergencies across large swaths of the U.S. So there is this renewed sense of urgency. At the same time, we've also seen a regression when it comes to abortion rights in certain places across Europe. In Hungary, for example, they've implemented tighter rules behind accessing abortion. Women now need to listen to the fetal heartbeat. In Poland, where abortion has been illegal since 1993, they've gotten rid of, in the last couple of years, one of the only exemptions to that law in the case of abnormal fetuses that aren't going to survive outside of the mother's womb. So there is this renewed sense of urgency here in France to get this to happen. But critics of the president, Emmanuel Macron, would say that this is really just a political stunt, that he knows that this is widely popular with a lot of citizens here. 85% approve of abortion rights, and that when his party does not have a majority in the parliament, that this is an easy victory for them, especially in an election year.
And this motion is expected to pass. How significant could that be for France?
You're right. At this point, this is really just a formality because this bill has already overwhelmingly passed the National Assembly and the Senate. All 925 lawmakers have been invited here to the Versailles Palace. They're going to be casting this vote. So it is expected to pass. It's going to need 3/5 majority to do so. But this is a significant thing. As you mentioned, this is the first country in the world to enshrine abortion into the Constitution. And it's only the 25th time that this has happened under the Constitution, and the first time since 2008. So it happens exceedingly rarely, these types of things, but an important issue for a lot of women in this country and a lot of just citizens in general to make sure that women have access to this, not as an interpretation of the Constitution, but because of the Constitution.
Tony, thank you very much. Our correspondent Tony Waterman in Paris. Beneath Finland's capital lies an underground city with a huge network of tunnels, mainly built during the Cold War. Now there are plans for Helsinki to use these spaces for heat storage and even as sources of geothermal energy. Our correspondent Peter Oliver reports.
The Finnish capital is home to a wide variety of subterranean spaces, from the spiritual.
If you are a religious person, you can easily feel that connection, but also if you are not, many people come here and say, oh, this is a fantastic feeling that I'm experiencing here.
To some of the most unusual gallery spaces the world has to offer. To those underground facilities they hope they never need.
We have civil defense shelters, over 5,500. And sheltering places for over 900,000 persons within Helsinki, and Helsinki is only 650,000 strong. So we are quite good on that perspective.
Now there are plans to harness some of the waste energy generated in the freezing winter months in the spaces underneath the city. Hewn directly into the rock of the city's Tulior neighborhood, with more than 500,000 visitors annually, the Temppelialkkio Church is one of Helsinki's top tourist attractions, as well as a place of worship. Those that look after the subterranean chapel know the benefits underground heat storage can have.
I'm all for it, and I think Temppelialkkio Church is a good example of how it can work, because we don't have much heating here. We just had -20 last week centigrades outside, but we don't have heavy heating here, and I'm standing here without a coat or anything.
The Finns have developed a real talent for finding not just functionality, but architectural beauty below the surface. There are few better examples of Helsinki's underground cultural spaces than the Amos Rex Art Museum. To protect old buildings above ground, the museum, which opened in 2018, was constructed under the Finnish capital. The 9.5-metre-high subterranean domes allow visitors to feel completely immersed in exhibitions like that of Japanese artist and composer Ryoji Akira.
I'm 20 metres under the bedrock of the city of Helsinki in a civil defence shelter that can house 6,000 people in the event of the worst happening. It's an expansive facility. It stretches out some 17,000 square metres under the Finnish capital. But on the day-to-day, it also serves the good people of Helsinki as a very fine sports centre.
Most of the shelters, which were started at the height of the Cold War and are designed to protect citizens in the event of a nuclear conflict, have dual purposes. Some are sports centres like this one, others storage facilities, and some are car parks. But when it comes to the idea of doubling up shelters for heat storage, the process requires storing that heat in water, which can cause space issues if these facilities were ever needed for their primary function as civil defence.
Tomorrow's technology will probably bring some things to that we don't need to reserve the heat to water. So we can reserve the heat on something else, for bedrock, for example, or sand, as they are testing now on some parts of the world.
It's the service tunnels that run under the city centre where developers have submitted plans for projects that could include waste heat recovery and even exploration into the next generation of geothermal heat. While those behind the plans are still awaiting permission to go ahead, their hope is to tie it into the Finnish capital's ambitious 2030 carbon neutrality target. Peter Oliver, CGTN, Helsinki.
Shehbaz Sharif has been formally sworn in as Pakistan's Prime Minister. He was elected by Parliament on Sunday for what will be his second time in office. It comes 3 weeks after disputed elections, which were marred by violence and accusations of vote rigging. Sharif says he wants to reform Pakistan's economy and improve international relations. A SpaceX rocket is heading to the International Space Station with a crew of 3 US astronauts and a Russian cosmonaut. It took off on Sunday for a 6-month mission. It's the 8th time a space station crew has been transported by the company, which was founded by Elon Musk. The world's oldest person has turned 117. Maria Moreira was born on March the 4th, 1907 in the United States, but returned to Spain with her family when she was 8. She's lived there ever since and has resided in the same nursing home for the past 23 years. Maria has agreed to undergo testing by researchers who hope to find the secret to a long life. The headlines again. A time to set the agenda. China's big decision makers open their annual meetings in Beijing to chart the country's future. No excuses. The US Vice President demands Israel increase the flow of aid to Gaza, calling for an immediate ceasefire. This as truce negotiations in Cairo stall. Hamas says it can't provide a list of hostages, blaming the ongoing bombardment in Gaza. And that is The World Today. Thank you for watching. We're back with more news at the top of the hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. But for now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.